And if you can never get rid of 100, and if we've got maybe 50, we may not have far to go to say we're as good as we're going to get. And that's okay. But
I've talked to a lot of other trucks about it too, who have their records,
and the Band-Aids.
off-site, like the clouds, and they say it's not all it's cracked up to.
Yes.
And they said it's a real problem sometimes.
Yeah, everything's
so
got
we can keep some, we're kind of on a good system now.
You see the picture the other
We've
day.
got everything,
So one of the girls.
we've identified everything, we've got everything labeled, and we've got a
He's out there inside.
a retention schedule on everything. So each year when we bust the newest stuff, we can get rid of the older stuff. So we're never going to really accumulate a lot more.
Right.
So
I guess it's not the stuff that we have for 75 years or forever.
It's not a merchandise. It's not a
It's like, which we don't even have back that far, so I don't know where they are. I mean, we went through everything.
I mean, you couldn't find the budget from 1948 if I was.
And if you ask,
But now the fact that there's two of them is ridiculous. They're multiplying. Yeah, and he's got a train going on in front of him too. Yeah, I'm like in a really bad spot here.
What's up, man? Yeah. Both great kids.
Yesterday. Last one of the businesses that we are going to.
Why? You're back, Chief.
Yeah, I know. Don't get triggered. You got it. Don't get triggered.
Everybody's on my end.
So we may want to contact the
Trump train.
I just want to it's not out there.
what is it?
What?
Looks like they could.
They can look at the pictures. We have a strong team. Just connected talking about here's the big talking about the school. We started that deal. The name platform. Is that one I think it's yeah. Okay, very good. We're waiting for Jack and Jeff and anyway. Very good. Okay. You're doing that.
When you go to the shop, look at the picture hanging on the board of what shop you're doing, and let me know what the original.
Do you have the resolution for this re-advertisement?
Look at the picture, let me know. Look at the picture, let me know.
Yes.
Airbnb. Chairs are workshop meeting. They go look at the picture. I think it's chairs this year.
Put them on pause for you.
I know. That's not true because there's everybody's trying to check it out. All the chairs are full right now. So how the picture is, just set it up that way. All right.
Julian? Busy?
Yeah.
Even though there's a limited inventory.
Set it up that way. All the chairs go to the side.
It's possible.
You know?
Yeah, and that's set up, that's a picture on there to put that.
Yeah.
Dave, one's good.
What's that?
You need something?
No, not really. Joey handed that note, the tire, that she done.
No.
Oh, we didn't give it to that? That's all. I went out there, and just wanted to put it out, see it on it.
We had somebody for custody.
Sam, how are you?
Tested negative.
What's going on here? We had a couple dolphins here.
Tested positive.
I think also drainage, yeah.
And she had Monty there. She said she took a shower. The shower was over. She had to go back on the couch. She's so fatigued. She can't. I saw yours. When he gave us a stack of
I said it real.
and they're recommending they'll put a renovation on the existing pump station. They want to see renovation,
But anyway, after that.
the addition of another pump station. These areas, it's really, I said, no. It's done these things. So, I want to talk about that to Jeff.
Yeah. See what happens.
Were you out here last night?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I saw you. I was walking my dog, so.
It's the sun. It's the sun. It's the sun. It is hot. The heat's all the way down. Nothing's on. Speakers weren't working the other day. I heard.
Well, that was.
Well, I was here.
Remember you asked me to move the dais and get all the wires there? So I pulled all the wires out, put them through the hole that they're supposed to be in, then put the dais over the top of the outlets. Plug back in the wires and work like that.
These are all yours.
So whatever that is, was that in the middle?
Hey Roger, how are you?
Yeah, in the middle.
Very good.
Plug in,
Jeffrey Hooker, Sam, you.
How you doing?
They're the same folks.
You can't take it. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. It's one of the drugs. Come on, Sean.
how are you?
Didn't come from me. They didn't come from me. I know I got my
Thanks for getting dressed up today.
I'm not with an architect.
Here?
No, when I came to see I didn't know he was an architect. But they They came here. That's the first of all. All they did was go and show them what that's awesome. Yeah. But old that's cool. An architect. I don't know. It was Tuesday. I wasn't. Sean said it. There were like 40 kids.
Yeah, the whole kind of hospital.
If you would know architecture.
If they only knew.
I should probably get some. Very sorry.
All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming out for today's workshop meeting. We'll start with the pledge of allegiance.
Hit the button.
Okay.
Like. There you go.
Great. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This meeting is now called to order. In line with the Borough of Seabright's long-standing policy of local government and in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, I wish to advise you that adequate notice of this regularly scheduled meeting was sent to the Asbury Park Press and other local newspapers on January 10, 2022. In each instance, the date, time, and location of this meeting was provided in the notice. This meeting is open to the public. Roll call. Councilmembers Bieber. Here. Virgil. Here. Hooker. Here. Devon. Here. Kayla. Lamy. Here. And Mary. All right, first up, we'll have remarks from the audience. If anybody in person or online would like to be heard, just please state your name and your address, and you have 3 minutes to address your anybody. Would anybody be heard? Anybody online to be heard?
What was the question we just came in?
I was just going, public service. Yeah, remarks from the audience. So if anybody wants to speak, state your name and address and floor is yours.
Like address 1184 Champion. I just wanted to ask you, during the summertime, I know the chief has a meeting, so I wouldn't want him to enforce it, but can we put signs in the beginning of the sidewalks? Because so many people, okay, end up hitting people, okay, with the bikes because they don't go on the road during the summertime. They go right through the sidewalks, and they don't care about people. And a lot of the white people are really quite inconsiderate. And I wanted to know if there could be a sign, just a bicycle and then with a slash, over the bicycle, put Peninsula Avenue, because that's where they seem to come in. And then by Tommy's, they come in that way.
The chief's right behind me, so
What?
chief heard the request.
It's not something that I want to give tickets for or anything like that.
No, it's just correct.
No.
You can get a sign with a bicycle slash on the sign. Just discuss it on the sidewalk. Yeah, we can work something out. That shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone else is, but I've seen so many people hit, okay, by the bicycles, and,
There's a lot of little kids riding. There's a lot of kids riding bicycles in town, and they tend to sit to the sidewalks.
you're absolutely right.
It's not. To be honest, I don't blame them. I don't like the fact that they're riding their bikes on the sidewalk because it is dangerous to be in the street in that area. But it is what it is. So
I know, but I see.
I yell at them when they're on their bikes. I tell them just walk in.
I see them, hitting little kids. I see them hitting adults.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, it is a problem.
that's all that's wrong with the town.
That's pretty right. All right, meeting adjourned. Thanks. Anyone else like to speak? No? Okay. No one else in line? Let's move on to our regular agenda items for discussion. First up, we go. Your capital projects update.
Only a few items today, Mayor, Council. We received the final estimate for the repair work in the front steps here that needed to be repaired as part of the construction project. The drains that go nowhere and some that are just going onto the sidewalk are going to be corrected. The water pit in the front of the municipal complex will be corrected along with that. So our engineer has gotten the bid, we've gotten the price quotes, and put together a package, and those will be completed, and that should wrap up the deficiencies that we identified in this building. And the water pit over there, we're not terribly far along, I don't think, with wrapping up the deficiencies over there. I know that Roger's staff has been talking to the attorney for the architect and trying to establish a schedule for mediation. So I'm hopeful within the next month or two we'll be in front of a mediator as our first step. Also, we received grants, as you know, for 4 streets through the Transportation Trust Fund. Soliciting, I have 2 proposals from 2 engineers. I'm waiting for a third, and then I'll bring it forward to start that project on the streets in town, hopefully. Which
What streets was that again?
I knew you were going to ask that.
I knew it.
So you know which one street? No,
I can't remember, yeah.
I'll email you the list.
We've been kicking it back and forth for.
It's been 2 years
Yeah.
since we were awarded, and now we finally gave us the letter of award. So that's all I have, Marilyn. Well, I guess we could parlay into Councilman Catalano's department. We were to receive bids this week for the lifeguard stands that we spoke about during the budget process, the taller, bigger, enclosed lifeguard stands. We had 4 or 5 people that received, requested the bid package, and we've got no bids. So we need to either revise the bid specs, which I don't think we're recommending at this time, or we need a resolution authorizing us to rebid it.
Isn't the company that we were interested in?
Yeah, Don spoke with them. I think their concern was they weren't used to New Jersey public purchasing laws with bid bonds and things of that nature. They're kind of like a company that just sells it to you.
Joe, is it possible to revise the specs now before we put it out there?
Roger, I was asked that question. If you go out to bid 2 times and you're unsuccessful, you can negotiate on the third count.
Yeah.
But if you revise them, can we do it that way, or what would you want to
I
revise?
was just thinking if we're limited to just the one company right now, well, if the specs are just limited to just one company and we had 5 people inquire, maybe if we change it a little looser, we would get it.
It does say we're equivalent in there. You have to, according to law. But we are, you're allowed to bid out the product you want. But there may be somebody in,
It also said assembly, like to set up on the beach, so I was thinking maybe the California company was a little scared off by that to set up the product too. So it may be a little bit more than what we were thinking by the purchase and then assembly.
Don spoke to them, I did not.
Okay.
Joe, can I add to this one question?
Sure.
There's a little confusion that I spoke to Don. It's not the spec itself. So the spec itself is how the item is built. It's what's the company, the vendor has a problem with is what he has to provide. The starting bond, insurance, all that. It's not the actual spec of what he needs to build.
Yeah.
It's what he needs to provide with that. So he doesn't have a problem with providing the equipment, the piece, but it's everything in the package itself.
If we go out to bid and he doesn't put in a bid and then we can negotiate, can we just purchase them at that point from it?
Yeah, it's a question, but yes, I think that's the time we can. According to,
All right, we may have a way to do that, just withhold payment until delivery. But I think he had on a ward or something, but let's talk to him about that. Maybe there's a way we can say, hey, we'll waive the bond, but we're not going to give you half upon award and half upon delivery.
We're going to want price to rebid that.
I think you
kind of have to.
You should.
I'm not going back.
So we do have a resolution. If did everyone have it or not?
I think Michelle said to everybody.
I think that's what it says.
Okay, so if somebody would like to offer that resolution.
I'll make the motion. You said that late night, if we were to get it purchased in the next 10 days, so maybe it's not a really early reading.
We need to
Make a real motion right now.
I'll make a motion.
I
made it. Motion to add that resolution.
Okay, did Sam make it? And then Jeff seconded it?
Yeah.
Or vice versa.
Councilmembers Bieber?
Yes.
Bertle?
Yes.
Booker?
Yes.
Catalano?
Yes.
Gilbert? And Lonnie?
Yes.
Alright, okay, motion to rebid the Night Bar Tower. There.
That's all I have. That one.
Alright, sounds good. And that covers number 10 on our list too. So. Alright, so on for our public safety update, I see both of our chiefs are here again. Hello. Chad, you're first, buddy.
I got full of them. Mine really quick though. 61 here for this morning call for service. The ladder truck is currently in for a brake job that we all discussed in the budget meetings. That's being done in Long County, Public Works. And that's got to go and get the springs. That's total projects, so we've got $10,000 or so, barring no complications. The rest of the maintenance for the rest of the trucks is scheduled after that. Trying to get it rolled on before July. In addition to that would be the mandatory testing required to do. That takes place the end of June. We'll be down on that place when we got June 27th. I'll let y'all know. Which is a common thing to do every year. Seasonal program. You should start seeing some resolutions at the next council meeting, start appointing those people. We had 15 applicants. We have 6 through the process already. By that I mean they're ready to come before you guys for approval of the resolution. And that's it. Thanks, Chief. All right, police chief, Brett, good morning.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'll make this quick. We're going to have a firework meeting with the county. Always going to make this take place at the end of the month. I will let Councilman Booker know who wants to join us on that one, but I'll give you the update. It seems to be going forward with Sandy Mulhern. Everything's slowly coming together, but we'll know by the end of the month how we're doing with manpower and get Tom Hagee involved. And so I'll let Councilman Booker know the time of the meeting. We also, I met with Kashi, Christina Davis from the DEP last week out on the beach. Everything was good out there. She was happy with what we're doing. If you have any questions for her, she's more than willing to talk. She'll be back out here probably next week. All beach management stuff goes through her, and she's great. She has a good cause, and you see how it's out there. She's pretty happy with us. One of the things I did last week, we went with Sean and Jim here, we looked at every single sign and see what has to be replaced. They're ordered. I got a few weeks, hopefully they'll be where they should be. Parking signs, no parking signs, fires, what else, Sean? That was just
The fines, I get it.
fines, this and that. The parking passes for everybody in town will be in probably the first week in May. They have been ordered, but we know it starts May 15th. They will be in. I ordered them about 2 months ago. They better be in. They always wait for the last minute to get them in. Also, I was down on the Church Street lot with Sean yesterday, meeting with Mike Conti. It is a go-ahead to have the Church Street parking this year. Instead of last year, we had it June 15th to September 15th. This year, we have it May 15th. So we have a month longer, which we needed. They are charging us more. Last year was $1,000. This year was $1,500. We have to have it. We have to have it. So I just wanted to give you the heads up on that one. That's
pretty much self-liquidating.
What's that?
It pays for itself, doesn't it?
It's about even. You know, the business parking passes are $75 a piece. I think last year we made $700 off them. So, but we have to pay for a fence out there too and gravel. So, I mean, we have no choice to move that parking lot for now. One of the things I talked about last year, and if you maybe look into it, this sounds kind of silly, but we wanted to move the time for the garbage pickup from 7 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock in the morning. Just because so many trucks are coming so early, people are complaining it's easier for the garbage trucks if they get here earlier. Something we can still look at, the time is coming up quick. And what do you guys think?
I don't know, we ever see complaints. They'll say it's here too early. Close. I don't care.
The challenge coming too late is that we're going to start trying to
They like coming earlier, they get in that,
I need to figure it out.
But have we ever had it earlier where we know sort of how it happened and how the stuff both ways?
Yes.
So the complaints that we've had recently come from the north end of town, in the last year. Trucks were coming pretty early, at 4:30. By them coming earlier, it gets them off of Ocean Avenue, opens up the parking from the trash being out there. There weren't any other complaints about noise except from one up north, and we had a complaint which wasn't our municipal, it was private pickup. That has been addressed, that was taken care of, they come at a later time. My opinion, by moving it to 6 o'clock, I think we'd be good on it. I don't think we'd get any complaints if it were 6 o'clock. It does help out a lot for them coming earlier.
And there were summonses issued last year to some of the companies that worked on, 5 o'clock or 5:15. That wasn't a problem. If we had the option of 6, it would just make it a little easier. Some of these, pick up those at the beach clubs over here.
So I assume because it's north end, that's where they start, so it's the earliest time they pick up.
Yeah, and then that was even flip-flopped, where they would, because the complaint was coming up there, they would come down here, pick up Centertown first, go south, then go back up north. So they had, but they were told 4:45, I think it was, when they were, that was way too early for them to come out. So they did push back later.
So Brett, your request is 6 o'clock and enforcement, but they don't do it earlier.
6 o'clock in the morning, yeah.
And not earlier, because it sounds like the more you move it up, the earlier they come. But if we enforce nothing, we enforce 6.
Yeah, I just feel like it would be easier for them to get earlier.
Yeah, right now it's what, 7?
Yeah, I mean, what we don't want to have happen is all of a sudden the residents are calling again saying they're here at 5 o'clock in the morning, we got a problem.
Well, they were calling at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it was the actual time was 7 o'clock, and so maybe 6, maybe everybody happy.
I think it's reasonable to say 6, but you can't come early.
6, but enforce it.
Like I said, there were summonses issued last year, and there wasn't a problem, so it's up to you guys, and any residents felt like they can, let us know.
My experience is that the trucks that stay on Ocean Avenue and go into the houses, that's not a problem. When they pull into a multi-unit complex and the big dumps, and then they're there for 3, 4, 5 minutes and the engine's running and all that.
And the dumpsters make one hell of a
Yeah.
Yeah, especially recycling. As just a point of interest, the letters have gone out limiting the number of containers. So.
Have we gotten any pushback on that?
Not yet.
Not yet. I think it's reasonable.
Okay.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
I have a deep in front of my house every time.
I put next to the dumpsters, they shake it before they go. This is the thing.
Yeah.
Anything else? Nothing else?
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
The car stealing situation that we have on the peninsula, that's really, really bad. Is Seabird experiencing as bad as?
So we have had some cars stolen in the past year or two. Not in fact, it's very hard to do that. Right, most of my cars are actually out of Ocean Avenue. But I will tell you again, most of the cars, about 90% of the cars that get stolen along the county, all the files are left in the car.
Yeah.
Please take the files out of your car. They're getting stolen. We don't even want to pursue them anymore. The state police don't pursue them because it's getting too fast. I think it's going to keep, as long as people keep leaving the files in the car, it's easy. Mama Beach is getting killed, Eel gets killed. I mean, they're getting killed with these stolen cars. So
I personally got targeted in the last couple of weeks, and they waited for, I saw cameras, and they waited for 2.5 hours to pull out. Yeah, it was a little scary to see the cameras and.
We put the signs out. Mama Beach has their sign out that's legal license plates all day long, cars going in and out. So.
At the next item, we're going to move to an executive session under contract negotiation regarding Haven. So we'll talk about that later on. So that out, and then we're up to number 4, which is Bulkhead Ordinance.
I'll talk about it, right?
Yeah,
Okay, the next two items are ordinance related. Before we do that, I just want to touch on the parking ordinance that we're all familiar with. It's gone through legal, so that's good. It's technically with the court right now, and they're doing their review on it. The chief's expectation is we'll get through the court fine. Our goal is to get this in place by Memorial Day weekend, which our main objective is to remember is to try to change bad behavior with illegal parking. But also the fines are going up significantly, so I think we do have to make residents aware of that, so that they're not surprised if it happens. I think John's putting it in the newsletter, when we get that out. And potentially on the sign, if we want to do that as well, Mayor, just to let people know, right, so our residents are not surprised. Moving on to the Bulkhead Ordinance, this is probably the most challenging of the ones we're working on right now, because it's complicated. The ordinance has been redrafted, and we did it in a way to extend the timelines for all phases of it, planning, permitting, and construction. We did send out letters to 25 residents out of the 147 that were surveyed by the engineering team. We got back 5 responses, only 5 out of the 27. Theoretically, the clock was running with fines. But since we're going to redraft the ordinance, in my mind, it's sort of a redo at this point in time, we've got to evaluate. I kind of read the responses. In general, they were weak. So I think we have to take that as a lesson of making sure when we actually roll this out in an updated form, that it's done in a way that's got some teeth. We have to remember the 27 identified, 3 of them belong to the town, and we have responsibility for that. So we've got a number of things we've got to figure out. First of all, we've got to figure out how to reissue this ordinance in a way that reflects the fact that we're taking it serious as a town. We're being proactive. We understand the challenges of doing this for the residents, but it's something that ultimately can be enforceable. And Joe has worked with our crew to start getting estimates of the cost for our 3 bulkheads that we would have to take care of ourselves. As we've said many times, we can't hold residents accountable if we're not doing it ourselves. The other thing we have to talk about as a council is what is going to be the funding methodology that people are going to use to repair these 27 bulkheads. Many people recognize it's their responsibility, so they'll do it themselves. In some cases, it will be difficult, so we have to determine if there's going to be an assessment methodology that we're going to use. And I think that's something we have to discuss as a council to get sorted out, because there will be challenges for people to do this. In the end, we recognize it's for the good of the entire town, of strengthening up the bulkheads, but it's going to take time. So my recommendation on this, and this is the top priority for the administration committee, we need to understand how we're going to formally roll this out, and that it is clear, respectful, and enforceable going forward. So we'll continue to work on that, and we'll get our estimate on what it's going to be for our 3 bulkheads, and we'll come back to a workshop with a set of recommendations on this.
They're doing a cost estimate on it now, so we have get our arms around it. The good news is if they're getting some pricing for a linear foot of bulkhead, the report does talk a little bit about the length of. Get their arms around what the total cost would be if you do want to put an assessment ordinance in place that allows the property owners to pay us over 10 years for the renovation bulkhead. So it's somewhat helpful for the residents.
We just have to make sure that they're aware that it's going to cost more than if they did it on their own.
We're going to have to find that out, but you're absolutely correct. We have to use prevailing wage and all those other things, but we may get certain economies for them by doing thousands of feet.
It may come relatively close to breaking even on whether they do it or we do it.
But it would be easy for the resident to say, call a contractor, he's saying this, and we're saying it'll be this,
right, yeah.
So they can make that decision. And paying it over 10 years at what is a reduced interest rate because our bonding capability is so good.
So are we restarting the clock as of the issuance of the new letter? The 90-day clock for the plan?
Yes, we will, but we haven't set a date of when we should reissue that because there's so many unanswered questions for ourselves.
So Trevor is contacting me on Monday. He's away, and I got that note, and I told him we'll discuss it on Monday, and let's see if he has any new time frames for product and things like that have caused people problems. But at the very least, the public ought to be getting in contact with the engineer to discuss the program at the very least. We're gonna have to encourage that.
Have we looked at, and what is the feedback from Roger, from Ricky as far as the assessment? Assessment.
Rich Shackley said it's permissible, that, it is permissible.
Okay.
I like that as an option now. I know it's
Well, I mean,
costly, but it's any financial option you can give to people paying over 10 years.
I mean, regardless of what the fact, whether or not we have that in place or not, if they don't do it, we're gonna step in and fix it anyway, so eventually it's gonna be a tax assessment.
Yeah, we're going to have to sort that out, because there's no sense in launching a date, committing people to things. We don't know how we're going to implement and enforce it. Or we're going to be answering questions. If we try to answer questions we don't have answers to.
Or we're going to be trying, with our own bulkheads, we have to have a clear path forward on that, because then when the public says, well, you're asking me about mine, but what about yours, and well, we're working on it.
Well, the difference, like I said, the difference between our bulkheads may not be up to par, but they're also not detrimental to the surrounding properties. Where some of these bulkheads are literally causing flooding throughout the entire town because they're not, it's not that they're not up to par, they're falling into the river. So, during high tide events, it's coming right over those bulkheads or right through those bulkheads and flooding the downtown. We're doing everything we can with the DPW to fix the check valves, which is part of the problem of the high tide coming up through the check valves and flooding the streets. We're fixing that, but if we don't fix the bulkheads, what's the point of doing that and spending that money? Because as soon as it gets high enough, it comes right into town anyway.
Yeah, I don't think that it's a situation where reasonable folks don't want to do the right thing and work on their property, etc. But as I have said before, and I'll keep saying because it's important, we have to make sure that the bulkhead we are responsible for are being addressed in the right way, and that we have it, because it will help us understand what the rest of the market looks like when we have clarity on how long things are going to take and what's involved and etc. And then we can offer that as a resource to residents who want to do the right thing and might need some help. So that's the reason.
Have we looked into any grants for help on it?
We did, but along with the grants come some strings attached, public access and things like that we got a lot of pushback on from the residents. We did the first time we looked at it. The federal grants, require, public access and things like that. There's a lot of strings attached to it. So we're still, Greg Blash, our engineers, exploring it, but also back to Councilman Bieber's comments, it'd be nice to know, because Councilman Booker, you're absolutely correct, we have to get our house in order, but it'd only be one, if we're going to do an assessment ordinance, it would be one bond that would include ours as well, or if we decide not to do an assessment ordinance, then it's a smaller bond to just do our bulkhead. So we need a little direction on that. We'll have more information for you at the next meeting, but we need a decision on which one we want to do.
Yeah, and we're going to have to go out to bond regardless of whether it's our 3 properties or whether it's all 27 properties that are affected. We're still going to have to go out to bond. So, we shouldn't just say, okay, well, the private property owners are, they're off the hook until we get ours in order. That's not right, because we don't necessarily know which property owners are going to actually make the repairs and get it done, and which aren't. So with the clock ticking and with our fees and our fines and penalties in place, we start to see which ones are going to. Now, we can obviously get our engineering and everything involved with our bulkhead to figure out how much those cost to fix, and then have that money, not money earmarked, but just have that estimate in place. And then once we have that estimate in place, we know what it costs. And then we wait to figure out, all right, well, which of these 27 properties is not going to get their thing done when those final penalties come in, and it's basically do or die for us, where we just take over the project and do it. They've been fined, they've had their slap on the hand or whatever for not getting it fixed on time. Now we know, okay, we've got 10 properties that we need to include in our bond. We've already got our numbers. Now we got to get the numbers for these 10
and then the tenant didn't get it done, and then we can roll forward with the bond. But we wait, if we keep pushing that, if we keep kicking that can down the line, we're never gonna get those numbers, and nobody's gonna ever get it done.
I don't think anybody disagrees with that, but the worst thing we can do is start the clock and we don't have clarity of what the rules of the game are. And we don't have clarity of what the rules of the game are. So our goal is to get that cleared up for the council. If we just take a look at the last run of this, when we issued the ordinance, right, it was formal, it was issued, letter was written, at 27.5 came back. Theoretically, now we should be invoking penalties to all 27 years. But we said, wait a minute, we're going to redo the ordinance. We don't want to do that.
Yeah.
We want to get it sorted out, and we have clarity, we have answers, we understand, we lead by example, we know our obligations. And some people say, I'll do it myself because it's more cost effective than going through the assessment process. But that's their choice once we lay out all the rules of the game. So that's the recommendation on that one. Okay, on short-term rentals, this is an interesting one because we have no ordinance in town. I'll talk a little bit about this briefly. I know we've talked about it in prior councils. But virtually every town around us has a short-term ordinance that's implemented. And the committee's done a lot of research on this. First of all, we're not talking about doing anything this year because it's too late. Most of the rentals have already taken place or will be very soon. But where we're gravitating towards at this point in time is defining a short-term rental as something longer than 4 days and typically a month to 6 months in the short-term rental window, right? It's not an annual kind of thing where you rent for the full year. We are proposing short-term rentals not be permitted less than 3 days, which is consistent with many of the towns around us. We're envisioning a registration fee done annually for about $500. That's typical for towns around us. We're requiring that anybody that registers has a point of contact so that we can reach out to them. We have to recognize and align with what's ever happening in condos and townhouses because they have their own bylaws. We want to make sure there's a CO on the property, and we're thinking it's done on an annual basis instead of every time there's a rental turnover, and violations in the event that people don't conform to this. Now, obviously, the biggest approach to this is things like Airbnb and VRBO. In 2019, the state law was changed that if you rent through one of those agencies, you are subject to state and municipal tax. If you rent privately, there is no tax imposed. So that'll be an interesting dynamic we'll have to pay attention to. If you do a quick survey online, we have somewhere between 50 and 70 short-term rentals available on Seabright. So that's part of what we'll have to deal with there. If you do a quick calculation of fees, penalties, municipal taxes, based on the number of units, it would probably be a revenue generation in the order of about $100,000. We're not doing it for revenue generation, we're doing it to make sure that basic objectives of the ordinance from a timing perspective and respect to property are adhered to. So Tom Hague drafted an excellent ordinance around this. I have a copy of it, I was reviewing it last night. We'll take it back to the committee, and once we have this sort of sorted out, we'll come back to the council and make a recommendation on this. The other thing we want to do, and this is the last point, is there are tools that allow this to be effectively done so it doesn't become administratively difficult. Think about 50 or 60 properties that are turning over hands every 3 days, potentially. How do you keep track of that? And there are tools, one of which is called Jungle Laser, which allows you to align with the information coming out of the Airbnb service and other things that will allow us to administer this, that we don't need to hire people to oversee this program. So that's the approach that we're taking right now. The committee's, this is a top priority for us. And again, because we are where we are in the year, we want to get it sorted out, understood, agreed to, and ready for 2023. The last thing I'll say, and we recommended this, is we're going to get the Airbnb representatives and talk with them. How has it worked in other towns? What's worked? What hasn't worked? What would you recommend to us? And incorporate that all into the final ordinance that I'd look to have in place probably by the middle of this year or Q3. And that's it on that one.
Thanks.
Any questions on that? Because this is a new thing for us.
Do you have any data on like any of the issues of like short-term rental? I mean, do you have any complaints on file? Like, and like, do you have anything to go off?
So we've talked about that at prior council meetings. The chief has indicated he hasn't seen much complaint around this. That's not unusual because people don't want to rat out their next door neighbor and create a problem. But I know and I'm sure other people have spoken to people in town that are challenged with overnight rentals, some of the unruly behavior, things like that. But we don't have any formal complaints where, as far as I know, about cases.
No, this isn't something we're getting phone calls about.
Yeah.
And then we're just going off like what we've heard on the.
I get residents complaining to me about it, periodically in the summer times, but I don't get it that often. So I'm not as
out. I'm not out there as much as you guys are, so you guys probably hear it more than I do. But I do get it from some of the downtown residents.
Like I reported at the prior workshop, of the 15 towns around us, virtually all of them put something in place around us. And the majority is somewhere between 3 days and a week minimum rental. And they're doing it to deal with certain behaviors. And the other issue is the town is a destination now. This is going to continue to grow as we go forward. So I think this is a good way of getting it in place, see how it operates, and if we have to make changes going forward, we'll have to go.
Thanks, Aaron.
Yep.
All right, on to number 6. Moody's outdoor management.
We were waiting for his plan. I'd like to schedule this for the next meeting. He was going to provide us with a plan. Roger's staff and I met with him and his attorney, and they will be providing us with a plan so we know exactly what's going on. We told them your concerns about permanent structures. We told him your concerns about leaving that sidewalk open. He agreed to those. He was asking for some consideration on the outdoor canopy because it was one that mirrors this one that is retractable, but it does have some bolts in the support columns. I said show us. And
That's why I said we can swap that sidewalk from where it is to the side closer, side closer to the side to the parking lot. Basically swap it over, and I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Let's see what he's doing. Okay, that's all I have on that.
Okay. Ongoing canvas discussions up next. Check Mr. Best first.
As this is being considered to be a not insignificant revenue generation for the town, finance committee's kind of taking the lead on this, and we've had folks who come before us, a couple groups here, I believe, who have an interest in opening what's called the Class 5 retail dispensary in Seabright. For those who may not remember, the process by which someone can open a dispensary, there are a lot of moving parts to it. It's not just a decision in town to have someone come in and open a dispensary. They have to get a state license. In order to get that state license, they're required to get local support for that. So again, there have been multiple groups that have come before us to sort of indicate what they would do, etc. Joe and I had a meeting the other day with an attorney, Bo Huck, who was former Senator O'Scanlan's chief of staff, who now is heavily involved in the cannabis space from a legal perspective, representing both industry and the commercial side, as well as the municipal side, and has offered some insights on that. Joe, it might make sense if you gave us a summary on what Bo said, on what not to do, the mistakes to avoid, and then we can move the discussion along from there.
He basically said that there's a couple various ways you go about determining what course Seabright would want to do. First would be, do you want to do it or do you not want to do it? Would be the ultimate decision. If you want to proceed, you're allowed to limit the number of licenses that the municipality can have. So you would make a decision on the number of licenses, whether it be one or some towns don't limit it at all. They do it through zoning that is permitted in this zone, and it would be a limiting factor on its own that way. Then there is the method by which you would want to prepare a resolution for approval. Do you want to do it through request for qualifications of the individuals? You could go out for an RFQ and then make a determination as to who you think is the best fit. There's criteria in the legislation that talks about who should be targeted for some of these licenses, and in their application, they being the people that were interested would talk about whether they met those qualifications. We'd have to develop our zoning ordinance to a degree that I wasn't, we have very limited signage signage in our zoning ordinance. We have to talk to our zoning officer to make recommendations on how to establish what type of advertising can be done locally here. What kind of odor control, something I was not familiar with, said affects some municipalities in some states. Emanating an odor in New Jersey, most of it will be vacuum packed, I suspect, and the odor wouldn't be as prevalent as it is in others, but we need to be cognizant of that. And so we have some work to do on our zoning ordinance, and ultimately this group will have to decide which way we want to go. Something that was an eye opener was the availability of product at this point. He was telling us that the level of product isn't necessarily there, so the person or people or LLCs that you want should be pretty heavily capitalized, because in the short term there might not be that product available, especially since the medical marijuana dispensaries are primary for some of that product. So there are a number of moving parts. He also wasn't too worried about, as I understood it, Councilman, that they were going to close down anytime soon the number process. He was, he says he's been working with the legislative committees and CRC, and doesn't feel that they'll be closed down anytime in the near future. So we have some things to do. The ultimate question is, do you want to proceed? And then we have all the other moving parts, zoning and things like that we have to simultaneously probably correct or take a closer look at in our ordinance.
Yeah, my understanding of it, and I've spent some considerable time looking at this. The initial thing we have to do is determine, are we wanting a classified dispensary in the town or not? That's the first thing we have to decide. Opting back in, because last summer we opted out. So if the majority believes that we could or should opt back in, then it becomes about, well, who do you want? And there's significant power there to determine. We're going to have one license if it is one, cap it at that, and then there could be a process to ensure transparency and fairness that similar to an RFP, we can structure more of an RFQ, which will give us, being the governing body, some level of latitude to be able to determine who we would want
We actually make that decision.
We can. The state license is a separate process. In order to get the license, someone has to have a resolution or a letter of support from the municipality where they want to go. So, that's
a catch-22 situation, because it's like let's say we have 5 people that are interested in opening something here, and we're only interested in one license. We pick 1 out of 5 from RFP or RFQ situation who are best suited for that purpose. We pick one of those 5. That person doesn't get a license, and then that person doesn't get a license from the state. Then we're back to square one. So now we got to start over with our, and then it's like they can't get the license unless they have the support from the town. But the support from the town doesn't mean anything once the state gets involved, because the state's not necessarily going to absolutely issue that license because we said, oh, we like this guy.
Well, part of what our responsibility would be to do is as we look at applicants, and some of it is our best process in determining who is the most likely to receive a license. And again, that might not be as complicated as you might think, because there are some basic things that would need to be in place. The strength of the overall application, the strength of the team, financial positioning, etc. One of the things that we could do, I imagine, Ryan could make sure that whether or not, as someone's preparing their application for the state, what information can we request from that application or additional information to have a better and clearer understanding as to the strength of the applicant's position before the state. So that's another way to make sure that we're getting with someone who's in a good position to be able to get that license.
And he even mentioned there were some of the towns that did have multiple resolutions.
They have.
But we're only going to say, but if we do more, if we say, all right, let's say 5 people go, 5 people put it in an RFP, and we say, okay, well, 3 of these are within our qualifications. We like 3 of them. And then those 3 go out and they get, 2 of them get a license. Now, we're only issuing 1 license.
Well, I mean, it depends on, that's, I guess, the answer to the second question. And the first question is, are we going to allow recreational marijuana? So, that would be a decision on that. And that's the question is, well, how many licenses are we going to allow in the borough? Then you work out the process after that.
I mean, I'm my standpoint on it. I'm for it. I think it's something we should definitely do. I think the numbers are there. Like I said, it's the only business in town that we can actually make money on. So it sounds like a considerable amount of money possible.
Well, let me just address the financial piece.
Hey, Jeff, before you go on to that, let me just ask a question. So everything we're just talking about points to me that this still remains a gray area of what's the process of selection. And we've had multiple people come in to express interest in doing this. I've also come to learn that the state actually defines the process for notification, solicitation, evaluation, and selection. So we've got to make sure, to Kevin's point, that whatever we do here, we're not out of compliance with that process. Because if we are, we're going to have a problem. We'll have to redo the whole process over again. So as we gear up for what we're going to do here, I would recommend we figure out exactly what that process is that we have to follow so we get it right.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. I know that there is a process by which this can or should be done from a statutory perspective. And Roger, whether it be something that you investigate, or if there are outside resources that others who are in it that may be able to be a resource to us. I know Porzio is one of the firms on our pool, so that's an option as well to get active and valid information from those who are deeper in it than what we are. So,
but to Erwin's point, to Erwin's point, we're shooting at a moving target because the state is still. I mean, yes, we're a lot further along than we were last August, but they're still redefining and defining and clarifying their rules and regulations. They're still, because they're learning. I mean, this is going to be a moving target, so to lock down exactly what the process is, it's pointless, because as soon as we think we know what the rules are, they're going to change them, or there's a chance that they may change, and then we got to reassess again anyway. Well, so to my point, I think it's yes, let's just get the ball rolling, and we'll just step into it with the state and and we'll learn as we go. But if we try and get everything set in stone first before we do it, it'll never happen.
I agree. And I'm just talking my thoughts. I'm ready to move forward on this full side. For me, it was the revenue. The revenues turned out to be what we thought it was going to be. So my only thing was, I think we should stick with one in town.
One license. Well, I haven't heard anybody asking for more than that. Mm-hmm. So that's.
So I think we get back to what Roger said. First things first. Do you want it in town? Number of licenses, and then we work on location, and we start going our path parallel to how we want to choose.
Yeah, you have to make sure otherwise you're wasting your time again, and then at the end, everybody doesn't want it.
So show of hands, who wants it?
Well, hang on a second. Because one of the things in my mind that still remains open is the question about revenue, right? We've heard numbers anywhere from $0 to $1 million, right?
Actually, more than that.
Yeah, and that's revenue for the town, not revenue for the business itself. And it's unclear. I think for some of us, we recognize this is going to be a town whether you want it or not. It's better to make money on it or not. I think we all agree with that. It will come with certain implications. I'm not concerned about being a mass riot situation. I think it'll be manageable. But we have to do this eyes open, right? And when we talk about what the revenue generation is, when do we get to a point that we snap a line and say, based on facts that are out there, Colorado, California, whatever it is you want to pick, this is a reasonable number? Because when we had our finance committee meeting with Mike Basson a week before, I said, Mike, please give us your best opinion on what you think the revenue is going to be. Because if I was going to trust anybody on the numbers, I'd go to the numbers guy. And when we asked him at the finance meeting, he said, I don't think it's going to be close to what you guys are thinking.
Right, and I was just getting to that because what in that conversation, one of the things that Mike said was to he offered, Bulkhead as a resource to look, and to, he said, talk to Bo, see what else is out there, what's being projected, based on what, etc. And yes, more than zero, less than $1 million. Okay, that narrows it down. When Joe and I sat with Bo, I said, okay, we're here in that gigantic window, all over the place. I said, if it's 200,000 revenue to the town, does that sound outrageous or ridiculous based on what you're seeing on both sides, the industry side, the municipal side? What are you hearing from your clients elsewhere, etc.? And he said, for a town our size, thinking that we will generate $150,000, $200,000 is not outrageous, and doesn't seem to be something ridiculous. And I know we've got some folks here in the audience that are interested. They have their own projections, but in my view, I'm in support of us opting back in and then walking down the path with the CRC, with other organizations to get it right from the beginning. So, and that's the reason why outside resources may be helpful to do this, to make sure that we get it right. So that's again, I think the point of the conversation today was to take the temperature of the council about the first question, about whether or not we're going to opt back in, and then behind that, if we do, there are all these moving parts and variables that we will attempt to lock down with regulators as we go forward.
Yeah, I think Mr. Robert disagrees. I would say the same thing. Do a straw poll of the council. I mean, keep in mind, maybe I can change my later. This isn't like a binding decision, but before you waste your time, go and work with attorneys, zoning officials, all that fun stuff.
Right. Or we get an early out as of now.
And then once you see the process, you may change your mind. If you don't like the process or do like the process. So anyway, anybody have any?
You want to do a show of hands who's for it and how many licenses? I'm for 1 license.
Can we comment when we break that in?
Yeah, sure.
So I am sort of on the fence. I am in favor of it if the real revenue projections are serious. And I am in favor of one and eliminating one.
So I'm kind of yes. Yes. But I have to say, I don't think there's any way to answer your revenue question. And the only way you could possibly project it would be go find a state that's legalized it and find a town the size of the seaway,
which is what they've done.
There's a seasonal population of X time of normal population and see the revenue. We're not going to find it. The question is, it's going to generate revenue. How much is the factor of a lot of things? What the market is, what the demand is, what the price is, how many people are going to buy it. If anybody comes here in the off season to buy it, we're not going to know those things before it happens. So to me, it's a question of revenue as opposed to no revenue. You're never going to figure out the amount.
I agree with everything you just said, but I think as a council, we have an obligation to do the best estimate.
That's projection to projection. We all know that.
I would say vote there for one, but I'd also like to open it back up to more than just the flour and have, since we're worried about the revenue, let's open it up to the gummies and the edibles.
Well, I think that's all included, isn't it?
Well, it's not. And again, folks in the audience that are living this every day. But it's my understanding of the current situation, gummies, edibles, that sort of thing, is not legal yet. Now the CRC says, and has said publicly, they want to get there, but they're not there yet. So, if someone were to open tomorrow, until the CRC, makes it clear as to what can be in the store, and we have clarity on that, I'm not against it, but as of now, the edibles and gummies and that sort of thing are not real, not legal.
Okay, I'm leaving that.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay. I thought it was.
No, I'm yes, from this perspective. I talked to counselors in other states and growers. It's coming. You participate. You're going to deal with the same nuances that come with it if you don't take the revenue. There's an opportunity we don't have from any other sources.
There's already a tentative majority here, so I guess that's the answer. And one, as of today?
One, I don't think we can do more than one, because I don't think we have a storefront.
One class 5, all in favor, Mr. Rogers clear, so.
Yeah.
Did we hear from everybody? Yeah. Jack, do you want to speak on it? Jack, do you have an opinion?
No.
Okay. All right, so we have one no, the other no's?
Okay, that gives us policy and. Right. Yes, guys. All right, so we're on to, I think John will speak. The next two, I know John's working on the new ski breeze and then also the key updates on the borough hall improvements.
Sure. So I have put together the secrets. We were paying vendors to do that in the past, to the tune of $10,000 a year. And we purchased a piece of software for $120. And it's crafted it, and we'll do it as long as I'm on council. We'll figure out how to go forward. But the deliverable is what's in question right now. We print it. I'm waiting for a price from our vendor that does mailing in bulk and all for us. As soon as they get that to me, we'll make it available several places. I'll make a QR code that will be in our kiosks. So if you want to grab one, you can grab it there. It'll be on our website. You can download it. We're looking at a vendor that has a communication.gov that we could send it out to anybody that subscribes. We don't really have email addresses for the town, so we don't have a way to deliver this other than mail right now. I'm trying to keep the budget in line with what it costs to do this and make sure it's effective. The first one, we haven't done in years.
Oh, yeah, so we can come up with it. I mean, I'd like to kind of go in old school with a hard copy if possible. I do think a lot, especially seniors.
As well, we put them in the lobbies of the building, bring them and put them in the lobby. You can go grab one, maybe advertise in some of the stores downtown where how you get it. So we're about ready because everything's moving, right? The dates are climbing on me, and I edited it this morning to pull out the things that happened. Most people don't know, other than the council, we had the Cub Scouts in the gym over the weekend. They did their Pinewood Derby. I was sort of, let's see how it goes. There were 400 people that showed up, 120 kids that did their race, had a good day. And I don't think we had any negative. Donna was let us use their parking, so we have a parking convention. And I look forward to putting together a youth program as well as an adult program. So today, the floor in the gym has been stripped already. It's had its first coat of varnish. Today they put the stripes about pickleball and basketball. And they will actually, I worked out a deal with them. It was originally going to be all one color. But pickleball will be grayish ones and the basketball will be blue, so you know where the little issues. They're doing that for no charge, and he's in there doing it for some money. So now it's to work with the rec crew. How do we make this available, right? I'm hoping to grab the 60-something kids that we have in town and somehow get to them to see what they want to do in there. We picked up a pool table, and that's in there. I'm looking at foosball, I'm looking at air hockey, things to get the kids in there after school maybe. And also talking to the library, some of the things they do might be better suited over there. They did some cooking in the past. So in the newsletter, it's going to ask you, do you want to get involved? Help me out? Do you have ideas of other things? People talk about bringing music and arts and all kinds of stuff. I'm pretty excited about it. I've done music programs in the past, but we have to put it together with some concrete. And we haven't had those meetings yet, and we haven't tracked. So again, the gym will probably be walkable today, but they're going to put the stripes and then 2 more coats. So probably the rest of the week into next week, and then you can come and see it.
Sounds good, John.
Thanks for all your hard work on that, John.
Great, that's wonderful. All right. So now we are on, I think everyone speaks to the street name?
Yeah, so this is an ongoing issue. It only affects a couple streets in town. Like I think I know of two definite, but I think there's two more that may be affected as well. But the two definite is Center Street and Church Street. There is a twin in Rumson for each one of these streets. We have Center Street in Rumson and Church Street in Rumson. So let's put it this way: if you live on either one of those streets, you become really good friends with your doppelganger in Rumson, because they get your packages, you get your packages. Everybody has the numbers, and they basically they're calling each other. Hey, I got your box again. But it happens more times than not. We have tried to go down this road before, and the biggest issue that we have is that if we do make the change, in order to make the change, first of all, everybody on those streets would have to agree to it, because it would have to be either a street name change. Yeah, it would either have to be a street name change where we're saying that it's like East Church Street or East Center Street, and then they would obviously have to go through and change everything about where they live. Can be a little bit daunting, and some people may balk at that, and that's where we had a lot of pushback the last time. The other option is to see if we can get the post office to give us a second zip code, but that would require everybody changing their address. Kind of. I'm not sure if that's as detrimental with a zip code change as it would be a address change going from west to that type of thing. A couple people have hit me up online for it, and so I told them I would definitely put it out there. It's probably a bridge too far, but I just figured I'd bring it up and put it up in front of the council.
I mean, I would say, just talking to the residents on those two streets, I mean, if you get a consensus that they want to change their name, I'd be amazed. But, you're going to get quite a few.
Yeah,
they'll be able to pick up their mail and swap from.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what's happened. That's what happened in the past.
Do you know the 2232, that still Rumson?
I'm not sure what the additional.
I get sent by you. I become good friends because my packages are there, because they go, some come up the wrong way and don't know where they're going, but some go sent by you. That's where they need to be, and I don't know what the 2232.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen the extra delineation on the zip code with the dash and then 4 numbers. But I haven't really noticed that as a delineation of any sort.
So what do you think of the Kevin, you want to research this, Kevin, and let us know, or what do you think you're going to do?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's I don't know if there's something that if it's even possible. I mean, if we change, I know we can change the street names, but yeah, I know zip code is next. Zip code is almost impossible.
A different zip code, 61, and post office so actually had real
Yeah, I think that's what the problem is. So, okay. Well, I mean, like I said, I'll put the feelers out there, see if we can get some feedback from Church Street and Beach Street, Church Street and Center Street, and see what the consensus is there, and see.
Start with Tom.
Yeah,
good idea.
Yeah, he's probably against it.
It shouldn't be a heavy lift to find out if those 4 digits or
yeah. So I can reach out to
I can just notify the people on those streets.
Yeah, I can reach out to the post office and find out.
Yeah, I mean, if they identify you Seabright, then that's easy.
Adding a little suffix to the number there.
Yeah.
Well, just tell people add your last.
Sometimes when I make an order, it asks me, the same thing. If I'm just mailing something, I don't.
Well, I do the same thing. Like, I'll put my address in and it'll come up, do you mean? And then it gives you that little 4 thing. And I go, I'm not sure. So no. Because if I do that, it may end up in Rumson. All right, thanks. So, okay. I'll kick it around and see if I can get some feedback from the residents.
All right, so this is upcoming resolutions there you can review, and we do have an executive session today, and we're not going to take any action afterwards again. So, once again, it's the end of the public portion of the meeting. Thanks for everyone for coming. And then we'll just make a motion to enter a closed session, and then we'll come out. We'll just.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Can I nothing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Karen, yes.
I live on East Church Street. And we lived there for 3 years before we even noticed the street sign. The problem is that it's hidden back, and so the delivery people can't see the street sign, so they don't even notice East Church Street there, even when we have company. So if the street sign could just move to the street, that would be a huge help.
Which one?
East Church. There's always a street sign there. You have to walk around and look for it. You can't see it. It's like behind another sign, and it's like back. It's not at the street. It's like back behind the park.
It couldn't help, I mean, but these Amazon drivers are having the Ocean Avenue easement.
Yeah, some we never package it. They always go to 3 Church Street, not 3. Yeah, you can't see the street sign.
So it would have to come out to the easement of Ocean Avenue.
No.
And,
move to the street instead of like back behind the parking lot, then that would probably, that would be a big help if no one would have to change their addresses or anything too, so.
Okay, thank you, Karen. I'll talk it over with DPW and see what options we have.
Then you could go and check it out and see, it's like hard to find the sign.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Was that it?
Are you gonna finish it up and go into executive?
Yes, update. We had our first town hall meeting for the regional list. I know it went pretty well. A little complicated at times, but it was a good first public meeting on that. And we're still working. Our attorneys are still working with, and I'm still working with the mayors of the towns that are considering potentially forming a district with. So we have another meeting coming up this week, and we'll verify a date on that, see how it progresses.
And we should be getting an updated report from our attorneys by the end of next week, they said, on alternatives to the 3 towns, and maybe just coordinating with one town.
Yep.
And looking at our options to give other options to.
Have we revisited?
Yeah.
I know there's been quite a turnover there. I know those that were opposed have left.
We have not.
It's an option. I know that's an option that a lot of folks would balk at. If we were able to get that, but again, they had no interest before. I think the mayor has changed hands since. Okay. And a couple of council folks also.
Sounds good. All right, with that, we'll make a motion to enter into executive session.
Second.
Councilmembers Bieber?
Yes.
Herzl?
Yes.
Rupert?
Yes.
Connor?
Yes.
Bueller?
Yes.